to take a stand and prepare our history. Thomas Sowell has shown us the way. It's time to start winning reality. We've been divided for far too long. It's time to come together and be strong. We can learn from our mistakes and make a brighter future for everyone. We have the power to make a change. All it takes is courage and faith. So let's stand up for what's right and make history together.
Hello and welcome to Repairing History. I am your host, Winning Reality. Thank you for being here this evening. I see Daisy Girl in the chat. How you doing, Daisy Girl? Talking trash and truth. How's it going? Thank you for being here. Hope everybody's having a wonderful day. Let's make sure that we're going on over here on Rumble. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Let's get rolling into another episode of Repairing History. Last week, we got to learn a lot more about who Thomas Sowell is and why his work is important. And we'll keep going down that track as we continue. Hey, Grimace Bar, how you doing, buddy? Thanks for being here. Appreciate it. We will tonight we're going to dive into kind of a continuation of last week's Unveiling Reality in a sense, but it's really a more focused version of that. I came across some really good film from 1966 that is another G. Edward Griffin work, but he's not really in it. It's more of a film that he helped produce. And this other group that put out this movie called Uncle Tom and Uncle Tom 2, both really great documentaries, and everybody should check out. Hey, Snafu, how you doing? Welcome. And I definitely want to look into those. I think there's a short version of one of those that we can watch. I think it's a paid kind of thing, so I'm not sure about restreaming it and so on. Maybe a Rumble exclusive. I don't know. I'll look into it. Definitely some interest in seeing it or hear about that. But yeah, it seems pretty good. But it's more of a modern take on things, so we can kind of like go to the present here and look at how the future affected it. And by the way, at the end of the stream tonight, not the end, after this first part, I'm going to show you a live example of why it's important to understand this topic right here and what it's actually doing to society. I have a very, very shocking live video from an incident in a Target. And being the knowledgeable people that we are at this point about these topics, you're going to see right away the subversion and the place where this woman was misled into these actions that ended up really making a fool of her and causing her some harm. So again, why it's important we understand these things where they come from is because inside of that is the solution to saying, let's all take a look at who's really causing this or what's really causing this. And we know at this point, has nothing to do with the color of someone's skin. And that's one thing that Thomas Sowell is great at pointing out. The documentary we're going to watch tonight is called Anarchy, and it was put out in 1966. And the intro tonight is going to be from Chad Jackson. And Chad Jackson is the guy who did the Uncle Tom's movie. Hey, Rabbit, how you doing? Let me go ahead and get that up, and we'll get rolling on that. Hope everybody's doing good. Let's see. Any other announcements? Saturday night, I'm still kind of up in the air about what I'm doing Saturday night. I may do I don't know. I see that. Look, I've been doing a new show called Winning Games, right? And I've been doing it on YouTube and Rumble, and I realized the game I'm playing, Far Cry 5, which Madcore Mofo has been joining me in. It's been a lot of fun. We did that last night. It just has too much copyrighted music in it to mess with on YouTube. And since getting remonetized and getting the other channel going, I think I've decided I'm just going to make it a Rumble exclusive. And also, I'm going to try to get it streaming over to Kick. Now, Kick is a new platform that's taken off that is really pretty much wide open right now. And it's kind of like a little bit of a competition for Twitch, right? A lot of people are moving over there, and they're doing really good. So I think as far as the gaming stream goes, Winning Games will be exclusive to Rumble and to Kick from now on. So I do have a channel on Kick. It's just, I think I do actually. I think it's there. I'm pretty sure it is. I set it up. It's kind of basic. I don't think I have one subscriber or anything over there at all. I don't know. Do they have subscribers or followers or I don't know. I don't know what they have. It's a new thing. But anyways, yeah. So that's what's going to go on with that. And then so maybe Saturday night is just one of those. I'm not sure. And they're going to be spring up kind of. They're going to be spring up shows too. So whichever RSVP or like whichever next show is out there, kind of waiting to notify me kind of thing, will be the one that's going to pop up. So no matter what it is, you'll see the announcement if you just hit notify me on that, and it'll become part of the rotation too, like I have for all these. So anyways, let me get this on here before people get tired of listening to me ramble. All right. All right. So I need to be like right. Should I do it like Good Logic? Look at me. I'm huge. I still think I like it this way better. I think some people do this though. I noticed that a lot of streamers do it this way, or they like move it around, kind of move it back and forth or whatever. I don't know which one. I think, I mean, with commenting on it, I can move it to here when I comment. Would you guys like that better? Thank you so much, Rabbit. Or would that be better, like when I'm talking, to do this and kind of move it back and forth? I don't know. It seems like a lot of work for no reason. That's a lot of work to push these buttons. They're right next to each other. Okay. Let's get into this. And of course, we'll be stopping and commenting, taking any kind of comments from the crowd. I'll be flashing them up. If you want to ask me a question directly, please at me, and I will definitely address it. And of course, love super chats. And hey, memberships are back. Become a part of the winner circle. You can do it. It's all right there just for you. All right. Let's get going. Take it away, Chad.
Of Uncle Tom 2. Since the release of Uncle Tom 2, several people have asked us for recommendations for resources they could use to do their own research. We did do a ton of research in the making of Uncle Tom 2. We read all kinds of books. We've dove through all kinds of archives and footage. And I remember as I was learning more and more about the civil rights movement and how steeped it was in Marxism, I was just amazed that nobody else has, to that point, put out a film that shows this side of American history, of the civil rights movement. That is until I came across a film called Anarchy USA, which was written and directed by G. Edward Griffin in 1966. When I watched it, I just had a feeling of shock and relief. Shock because here you had a film that basically showed a lot of the same things that I myself have come across in my own research, and relief that I'm not the only one talking about it. In fact, that G. Edward Griffin was talking about it well before I was even born. So that was cool to see because it helped me to understand that there's a lot of people who know full well what the civil rights movement was all about. So consider this resource to be the first of several videos that we will release over the next few weeks in our audience's quest for truth. So without further ado, I present to you Anarchy USA.
And by the way, just so you guys know, that the name of the channel is the Uncle Tom YouTube channel. So you just Uncle Tom and you're there.
Listen, see, we the Negro people down here have gotten completely fed up, and you know what they're gonna do tonight? They don't care. They're not gonna fight down here no more. You know where they going? They after the white people. Now they after the white people. They gonna congregate. They gonna caravan out in Inglewood, Playa Del Rey, and everywhere else the white man's supposed to stay. They gonna do the white man in tonight, and I'm gonna wait now.
Man, they've been working on that song, huh?
Anarchy, the breakdown of law and order, a chaotic reign of terror, mob rule, and rioting, the collapse of government authority. These phrases ring strange in the ears of Americans, and for good reason. Through the years, America has stood as the world symbol for law and order. Our government is responsive to the will of the people.
I just want to point out, I don't think that's a knock on modern day anarchy or like the term anarcho-capitalist or anything like that. Anything that's kind of like related to that libertarian and kind of idea for government, right? Or no government, I guess. But I don't think it's. I think that's more talking about the state of affairs there versus an actual belief. Like we see today, like, because I know that terminology has kind of, I don't know if it's evolved or it's just they're using it in a different way. But I just want to point out, I don't think that was a knock on anybody who is an anarcho-capitalist or any that prescribes that kind of brand of like I would call it almost libertarianism, like a far type of libertarianism, deep libertarianism. I would think. Just anyways, I just want to point that out.
Our courts and legislatures provide the mechanics for a peaceful redress of grievances. And the policeman on the corner has traditionally been looked upon as a friend, not as the instrument of a tyrant. Anarchy, well, that was something we read about in our newspapers that was always happening in other countries. Perhaps the people in other countries had just reasons to riot against their governments. After all, many of the nations of the world are dictatorships in one form or another. What business was it of ours, anyway? Newsworthy, perhaps, but it could never happen here. Then, in the summer of 1964, widespread rioting and looting suddenly broke out in Harlem, in Rochester, in Newark, in Jersey City, in Philadelphia.
Of course, in Jersey City. Yeah, you know who that was for. Yeah, Grim. And by the way, just to point this out, I think this is definitely an area we're going to talk about on Unveiling Reality, more about this concept of anarchism and stuff like that. So if you want to be part of that stream, we'll talk about it. It's not going to be for a while, but I definitely want to cover the topic. There it is. There it is. Okay, just making sure you're still there.
Yeah, Cleveland, and Chicago, all within a few days of each other. It was as though an unseen hand had given the signal. Then, on August 18th, 1965, guns replaced nightsticks in the hands of law enforcement officers as the Watts area of Los Angeles literally burst into a cauldron of insurrection.
Now, can anybody see a connection here? Like, can anybody draw a correlation about history repeating itself? Like, I had no idea before I saw this that those events happen so close to each other. Like, you just don't think about it. You hear about them, but no one kind of spells out in a way that's like, oh yeah, back to back to back to back. And that's strange, right? But we saw the same thing with BLM riots and Antifa and BLM stuff, right? We've seen this. And then the culmination of a giant event, right? So Watts would have been the big giant event where law enforcement was forced to go to the next step because of the condition of the society. Now, I think today people wouldn't have remembered a time when cops were more prone to just enforce the law with group authority and with a nightstick, versus having to draw a gun. Nowadays, they're ready to, they don't know if when they walk up to a car whether they're going to make it back to their own car or not. They got their hand on the gun, they're worried, checking things out. I mean, that's how much it's changed. And these riots right here had a lot to do with it. I'll tell you what, as someone who saw the effects of a riot change the world around him when he was just a teenager in my own hometown. I've told this story before, but we used to have I'll tell the brief version of this because I feel like it can go on. There's a lot of parts to it, but and essentially what happened is there used to be a weekend or a week every year or a weekend or something like that where the Black college students would come down and have spring break in Virginia Beach, right? And they called it Greek Fest, and it was fine for a long time. And then about the time rap, like gangster rap music came out, suddenly a bunch of the punks that weren't going to college from like Norfolk and other areas would come down to hit on the chicks, the college chicks, right? And they started coming in there with that gang mentality, and they would cause all the trouble for the decent college kids that were there just having a good time, you know, who were always well behaved and polite and a great part of the economy for us, you know, as for the tourist part of it. And they were throwing bricks through windshields. They were gangbanging 7-Elevens and stealing everything and running out. And so the laws had to change there, and the policing got a lot more intense there. And it didn't end when the festival was over. They tried it one more time, renamed it Labor Fest, and it did the same thing. And they said, bye. Now it's here in Atlanta. It's called Freaknik. But the whole point is that you know, before that, you could cruise down the strip. Before that, you know, there wasn't any racial issues in Virginia Beach at all. In fact, we were one of the places you could go and find a lot of interracial couples. I just basically grew up that way, so I never thought much about it. My first best friend, you know, in college and way back, you know, so it's like, you know, I've seen the effects that this can have, and believe me, in Virginia Beach, where there was 5 military, every branch of the military was there, you know, including Coast Guard. We were quick to get action on any kind of mechanisms like that. We had policemen on horse before most people did. We had cameras up before most people did. Things like that, you know. So, anyways, the correlations are amazing here to what is going on today and how the same thing kind of happens. Makes you wonder who's behind that too, huh? And what do you know? Marxist BLM, kind of crazy.
Thousands of rioters roamed the streets both night and day, smashing and looting and setting the torch to over 50 square miles of the city. Hidden snipers held police and firefighters at bay as fires raged unabated. At least 35 Americans died in the violence and gunfire. The sheer magnitude of this monstrous madness strained the abilities of the civil authorities, and the California National Guard was sent to Watts with orders to quell the violence with brute force if necessary. The spectacle of American soldiers shooting it out with American civilians was even more shocking than the rioting itself.
Okay, you hear that? So why didn't Trump send in troops to Seattle or to Kenosha or to any of these places? Here's your answer. He was around back then. He saw this too. He probably was like, yeah, they would just love to fry me with that, wouldn't they? And everybody's kind of encouraging him to do it and saying, we need to do this. And just take a look at history right here, like, you know, in the history books.
The nation was stunned and horrified. No smugness now. This time, it wasn't a foreign country. This time, it was Anarchy USA. The degree of communist influence in these riots has been subject of much discussion and controversy. For a solution to this controversy, let's review the events of recent years, both at home and abroad, in light of the communists' own plans for world conquest.
The communists disdain to conceal their views and aims. They openly declare that their ends can only be attained by the forcible overthrow of all existing social conditions.
The most powerful enemy can be conquered only by exerting the utmost effort and by thoroughly, carefully, attentively, and skillfully taking advantage of even the smallest rift, of every antagonism of interest among the various groups or types within the various countries.
There you have it right there. By taking advantage of even the smallest rift. They always find the freshest wound to dig into, right? The one that's gonna easiest to stir up, right? Leninism. And who loved this kind of stuff? Well, a lot of the people that have been in charge of the country from time to time.
Divide the people. Split them into quarreling factions, fighting among themselves rather than their common enemy. This is the comrade's first rule for the conquest of any country. For well do they know from long experience that the nation so divided and weakened can be easily conquered from within. For Mao Zedong, finding the point upon which to divide the people of China and create a revolution was comparatively simple. The Chinese for centuries had been principally tillers of the soil, eking a meager livelihood from land they did not
That's
always
interesting.
own
Never heard
and
that.
for which they paid tribute to landlords who generally had large holdings.
I'm not sure what Musk is.
Strong backs and legs were requisite to survival for the great masses who provided the power for China's limited and primitive industry and agrarian economy.
Oh my God, there's so much.
A new regime promised reforms, but the communists were not interested in reform. They were dedicated to revolution. Because of the dissension and sabotage created by the insurrectionists and the reticence of some of the landlords and merchants to change the established traditions, the reforms were slow in coming. And so the rich and well-to-do were inclined to stay rich and well-to-do, and the lot of the poor fared only slightly better. And a minority of the Chinese peasants
Incoming poll.
accepted the idea so subtly planted and avidly nurtured by the communist leaders. The so-called enemy of the people had been identified. It was the landlord. He was the cause of the misery and injustice. And so the point of division for the Chinese people was established. In Cuba, a land accustomed to crisis in government and the decrees of dictators, Fulgencio Batista headed a regime that was the least tyrannical Cuba had known for several decades. Rising levels of education, culture, industry, and commerce were enabling the people to enjoy the highest standards of living in all Latin and South America. Corruption in government there was, but no more than was to be found in many cities in the United States. Fidel Castro, a young, well-trained communist revolutionary with much experience, seized upon the issue of corruption in government as he undertook the creation of his revolution. It was the government, said Castro. The government was responsible for the problems and oppression felt by the people. It was the dictator and his followers. It was the Batistianos. They were the enemy. In Cuba, as in all countries, there were the poor and the poorly educated who labored in the fields. Castro promised agrarian reform, which focused the discontent of the rural community upon the latifundista. They, too, were the enemy. And so the communists, experts at fomenting discontent, began to split the population into quarreling factions, setting Cuban against Cuban. Algeria is a creation of the French. Before the French came to the land now known as Algeria, it was nothing more than a conglomerate of warring tribes. Their constant fighting among themselves for the best pasture land each spring and the best barley land each autumn kept the native population of the area at about 1,500,000 for 14 centuries. Today, after little more than 100 years of French rule, the population of Algeria stands at about 9 million. Under French dominion, the Algerian nation grew and prospered. The two cultures of Islam and Christianity were working together to create a good life. In the early 1930s, the dissident voice of the communist was heard among the people. At first it whispered, "The Algerian nation is not France, cannot be France, and does not wish to be France. Independence is the natural right of all peoples." As the seeds of disunity began to germinate, the dissident voice was heard more loudly to proclaim, "Islam is my religion. Arabic is my language. Algeria is my fatherland." And so, too, in Algeria, were the issues that were to divide the people clearly defined. It was to be Muslim against Christian, Arab against European, Algeria against France. The enemy was personified as the Cologne. With phase one, that of dividing the population, completed, the revolutionists were ready to move into phase two of the communist blueprint for takeover. Create the appearance of popular support. In every country now part of the Red Slave Empire, the actual number of Communist Party members at the time of takeover has been less than 1% of the total population. As Lenin phrased it,
communism must be built with non-communist hands.
By cleverly beguiling thousands of well-intentioned people into unwittingly supporting the revolutionary program, the dedicated 1% can trick the 99% into surrendering their birthright. This they do by hiding the true communist objectives behind appealing slogans and pretended humanitarian goals. As Stalin explained,
the revolutionary accepts reform in order to use it as a cover for his illegal work.
In China, the propaganda mills were active in championing Mao's agrarian reform. The propagandists portrayed in vivid detail the hardships and injustices of the Chinese peasant. The communists popularized the slogan, "Land to the tiller." Mao Zedong exclaimed, "We are not striving for the social and political communism of Russia. Rather, we prefer to think of what we are doing as something Lincoln fought for in the Civil War, the liberation of slaves." In the United
You see, you draw that comparison. Sorry, I realized my mic was off last time. I was just saying, like, the tilling the soil is like saying, like, you know, Black Lives Matter or whatever slogan that is appealing to today. I mean, we can probably draw a lot of correlations between the ones that we'll see here and what we've known today, but also that
United States, those books which praised Mao Zedong.
Yeah, Mao Zedong, again, he came in and compared himself to Lincoln and said what he was doing was freeing the slaves. Now, that's endearing to Americans, right? So that's a strategically smart thing to say, to build that archetype for himself, you know, in the American mind. And then later on, we see, you know, people carrying Mao signs. Now, that takes on a whole new meaning once you understand where this is coming from. Like in the past, you think it's this big movement. Some people would look at it and say this big movement, this big enlightenment, this big evolution of government, or the better way to do things, and, you know, screw the system the way it is, and what, you know, everything that's bad about it. We talk about it, and we talk about how everything is going to be great in this utopia. But like this guy in China who's fleeing the slaves, right? That's probably, you got to put yourself back in that time frame. I think a lot of people carrying their signs really believe that stuff, right? But meanwhile, all they're doing was just putting a nice face on a tyrant and a murderer.
As non-communist and an agrarian reformer were advocated reading, and some even became book club selections. It was later revealed that many of the pro-communist books and articles were written and reviewed in this country by communists. The American people, unaware of the treachery, were conditioned to accept the enslavement of China's millions. Cubans rallied round the slogan, "Patria o muerte." But perhaps the most widely used slogan was the one later to be used in Haiti and Venezuela, and still later in English in the United States. "Venceremos." We shall overcome.
Yeah, that is troublesome to think
Early in the
about.
revolution, Fidel Castro sought to reassure the people of the true nature of the uprising. I have said very clearly that we are not communists. Our revolution is a humanistic one. The press of
believe
the
he's not
world
communist.
sang the praises of Fidel Castro. Many eulogized him as the savior of Cuba. In the United States, Castro was
ATR.
referred to as the Robin Hood of the Sierra Maestra, that he pursued the same policy of taking from the rich and giving to the poor. The nation's press was quick to report, "This is not a communist revolution in any sense of the word, and there are no communists in position of control. The only power worth considering in Cuba is in the hands of Premier Castro, who is not only not communist, but decidedly anti-communist." And so the Cubans and the Americans and the rest of the world were reassured that there was no infidel in Fidel.
Right. And this is a part of history, again, repairing history, right? This is the part of history that gets left out. You know, the lead up to these things, the ramp up to these things. We usually just hear about the results. And then the results are like, you know, we see the conclusion here. But we don't realize that how these things get started a lot of times. That's a lot of what this show is going to be about, is actually going to origins and putting back in the facts that have been omitted, thus repairing the history in our minds and hopefully the minds of many more as time goes along. And we realize how important it is to have a truth and fundamental facts in history, away from the story mode, but more into the details, whether we like them or not, or they serve our purpose or not. It's just the facts. We need truth. And, you know, and usually in the truth, people can find reason. And when it's exaggerated or dramatized, or there's an agenda, or there's tactical means going on, subversion going on behind what a person or a group is talking about, and hundreds of others, you know, they tend to get locked into history for that story, not the actual facts of the matter. But anyways, yeah, let's go.
In Algeria, more land was owned by Muslims than was owned by the Europeans. Yet the propagandists claimed that the poor Muslims were being oppressed by the wealthy European landowners. The call was for Muslim unity. It was oppression, colonial oppression, the Muslims were to fight. It was to be a holy war in God's cause.
That's still around, isn't it?
The insurrectionists declared that Algerians were an oppressed people living under a tyrannical colonial government, and therefore their revolt was a war of liberation. Since all Algerians held full French citizenship, both Muslim and Christian majorities regarded the idea of liberation as ridiculous. Ahmed Ben Bella, leader of the revolutionists, and 4 companions were arrested by the French and confined as political prisoners. Ben Bella later escaped to Cairo, where he and others set about the task of convincing France, the world, and the Algerians that Algeria needed to be liberated. Then started a systematic reign of terror designed to intimidate the Muslims into going along with the liberation movement. This book was published by the French army in an attempt to alert the free peoples of the world as to the true methods employed by the communist-led insurrectionists. The atrocities shown here were perpetrated upon the Muslims by Ben Bella's rebels parading under the banner of the National Liberation Front, or FLN.
These are a little gory, but they're truth. So only just a couple minutes of it. Just warning, 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 warning. They didn't pull any punches back then. You know, they were like, this is the reality of what we're facing. These will be the unfortunate
men, women, and even children came under this merciless scourge in the name of freedom.
Sorry, I should have warned that a little bit. I forgot that was there. I would have given you guys a heads up on that. But yeah, unfortunately, they were allowed to drive points home, where today we're a little bit more averse to these things, right? We don't see these kind of things on TV. But you know, back then they're showing the horrors of war so that people would not do it. You know, today we don't really get an idea of what's going on.
We would never have brought these documents to the notice of public opinion had the torturers
Sometimes the
not
truth's very
chosen
ugly.
to depict themselves as victims, had the criminals not been transmuted into accusers.
I apologize for that.
And that is
Talk to me,
exactly
buddy.
the way it appeared to the world. The French army was accused of police brutality. The godless revolutionaries were depicted as liberators. The insurrection was described as a popular and spontaneous uprising of the people. So effective was the programming of this big lie that some of the world's leading citizens were led to give aid and comfort to the enemy that plans to conquer the world.
I am today introducing a resolution which I believe outlines the best hopes for peace and settlement in Algeria. It urges in brief that the President and the Secretary of State be strongly encouraged to place the influence of the United States behind efforts either through the North Atlantic Treaty Organization or through the good offices of the Prime Minister of Tunisia, Sultan of Morocco, to establish the basis for a settlement of an independent personality of Algeria, interdependent with France and the neighboring nations. I believe this to be of vital importance to us.
This photo was taken October 15th, 1962 in Washington, D.C.
Thank you,
and
T3.
carried the following caption.
Appreciate that.
Premier Ahmed Ben Bella of Algeria and President Kennedy stand as Ben Bella receives full military honors shortly after his arrival today for talks with the chief executive. Ben Bella is expected to thank Kennedy for having called for Algerian independence as far back as 1957.
That's just one part of it. Again, I'm sorry if that shocked anybody. Hopefully anybody who left because it was something you don't see anymore these days will come back. But you know, this is a YouTube video. It's already up. So I'm guessing that hopefully I won't get demonetized for it. But you never know.
After receiving full military honors at the White House, Ben Bella visited fellow revolutionary Fidel Castro before returning to Algeria. In April of 1964, Americans read in their newspaper, "Far more important facts are that Premier Ben Bella, though very much a dictator, is not a communist." 1 month.
Yeah, they always tell you they're not communists, right? So if they're making a big point about they're not communists, maybe that's the thing. Maybe that, you know, it turns out they are. Remember in Unveiling Reality, G. Edward Griffith was talking about how they'll always implement communism under the veil of socialism. So remember that when the elections come up next year.
A month later, in May of 1964, Ben Bella was awarded the Lenin Peace Prize in Moscow.
Okay.
2 months later, in July 1964, Communist Ben Bella declared, "We solemnly reply here that our socialism stems from Islam. We repeat before world opinion that we are not communists." After the communists have found some issue or point of difference upon which they can divide the people, get them fighting among themselves rather than their common enemy, the next step is to create the appearance of popular support for the communists' war of national liberation. They have been devastatingly successful thus far. Yet in one country after another, there have been alert, informed individuals who saw the signs, recognized the patterns of conquest, and raised their voices to warn the people. Against just such a contingency, the communists developed the third phase of their blueprint for world domination: neutralize the opposition.
We can and must write in a language which sows among the masses hate, revulsion, and scorn toward those who disagree with us.
A Communist Party directive issued in 1943 reads,
Members and front organizations must continually embarrass, discredit, and degrade our critics. When obstructionists become too irritating, label them as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic. Constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind.
Okay, I want to stop that right there just to kind of let y'all look at that for a second. Tell me this is not Tell me why this is how this is not today, right? It's like it's the same exact strategy that's been going on the entire time. That's when you just look back a little bit further in time, you can find all the clues that'll give you the answers. Yeah, I mean, what does Antifa and BLM do? Call us fascists, Nazis, anti-Semitic. And then they throw the anti-Semitic in there we see this all the time, right? Associate those who oppose us with the names which already have bad smell, like Trumpian Hitler, all these other things, that they throw out there. The association will, after repetition, become fact in the public mind. We've seen how fast that works today, right? With social media and in a weaponized media, establishment media that's on point with their attacks. Yeah, it's all right there, huh? Isn't that crazy? Now think about how many people aren't getting this information right now, right? How many people don't understand that this is what's going on? They're like, well, you just call us names and stuff. They don't understand that there's a background to this, right? And this is why it's important to understand real history. And, because with that, you can have a broader, more reasonable picture of things and understand, well, this is obviously a Marxist tactic, whether you know you're using it or not. Want to know where it comes from? Boom, you can explain to them where it comes from, throw them a link to the film, raise their awareness about their own language. That may be one of the things that actually puts a stop to some of this, is actually just being able to call game on it. Like you unrig the game by calling the rigged game, right? And you're pointing out the methods they use to rig the game, right? When you point out the methods they're using to rig the game, the only thing they can do is deny it. But everybody else who's in question about it, or who is uneasy about it, will make the association and understand that what you're saying there is the truth, or what that is the truth that's being stated. So this is why it's so important. And this is one of the great values this show is going to add to your lives and hopefully to others. So if you're out there and you enjoy it, please hit the thumbs up and share it out to some of your favorite Discords and Twitter and wherever you could. I mean, it would mean so much to help grow this show and the channel so that we can do more. So that more people will be on this journey with us as we're learning these awesome things. So I really appreciate all the help that everybody gives me that's out there. And I appreciate any effort that people put to help make this a better show and that can reach more people. So let's get on with it. What do you say?
In China, the formula worked well. The word landlord became almost an invective. Those who worked for the government were looked upon as grafters. The government under Chiang Kai-shek was reviled as an enemy of the people, a fascist tool of the ruling class. Those who refused to support the agrarian reformers were subject to surprise visits from roving guerrilla bands. The pattern was the same in Cuba. Those who were less than enthusiastic about Castro's reform were effectively branded as Batista followers. The man who spoke up against the revolt was labeled as a counter-revolutionary. Algerians who saw through the fraud and endeavored to warn the nation or their neighbors were vilified as extremists, colonialists, racists, fascists. Torture, death, and the fear of torture and death were also most effective weapons against those who might resist the tyrannical takeover. The number of atrocities committed in the name of freedom upon the Muslim people averaged nearly 20 per day for every day of every month for 7 years. The next step in the communist strategy is the most easily recognized, for it consists of the tactic of getting masses into motion, and thus precipitating mob violence. Master psychologists that they are, the communists know that once the masses are in the streets, it's not too difficult to convert an orderly demonstration into a full-scale riot.
You're damn welcome.
They
But
know,
when you're
too, that when rioting occurs, police and military forces of the government must move to restore law and order, and thus they have the first visible signs of revolution.
Riots, demonstrations.
Yeah, if it was close enough, I'd come get you, buddy. It'll take me a little too long to get to Nashville and back. But man, hang in there. I'm glad we'll keep you company. We'll keep you company. Riots in the streets. Whoa. Good thing those don't happen anymore.
Street battles, detachments of a revolutionary army. Such are the stages in the development of the popular uprising.
The official constitution and program of the Communist Party stated in 1921,
The Communist Party will educate and organize the working masses for mass.
And just to kind of catch up anybody who's coming in right now, we're just building up for the what we're getting to as far as the main point of this, and that this communist, the Marxist infiltration of communities isn't just unique to the United States and the Black community, but it's also it's a strategy that's been used worldwide throughout history. So at least throughout the time of COVID Marxism, right? So that's what we're drawing attention to now, and we're just kind of running over the examples. So thank you for being here. I think you'll find this interesting.
Mass strikes and mass demonstrations. It is through struggles that the working masses are prepared for the final conflict for power. As these strikes grow in number and intensity, they acquire political character through unavoidable collision and open combat with the capitalistic state. Mass action culminates in insurrection and civil war.
in 1964, a communist document taken from the Viet Cong stated,
Get the people out into the streets. Quarrels should be provoked. Youth groups are to be armed with knives and clubs, allegedly to protect themselves in a manufactured tension.
In China, as in all countries, the communist appeal was aimed primarily at students, young, idealistic intellectuals, most of whom came from wealthy families who could afford to send them to school. It was from this group that the young communist recruits came who later provided the leadership and backbone for the armed conflict to follow. In Cuba, leftist-oriented students were the vanguard of the organized street demonstrations. Once the masses were in motion, that tenuous line between demonstration and riot, between nonviolence and violence, was easily obliterated. As law enforcement officers sought to restore order, police brutality became the cry of the insurgents.
And are we lucky that none of this has ever happened here? it's like they just might as well just fast forward, put it in color, and just record America, and you can use the same audio track for that. I bet you I could take this audio track and just put all new stuff over top of it. This is amazing stuff. I hope you guys are enjoying it.
Algeria was more of the same. Rallies, demonstrations, marches, and the inevitable flare of violence.
Oh, that guy got hit by that bus coming in. Holy cow. Was that a guy?
The invariable charges of police brutality were hurled as efforts were made to maintain law and order. When marches and demonstrations turn into riots in any country slated for takeover, the communists are then ready to implement the final stage of their blueprint for conquest. It takes only a handful of armed opportunists, criminals, and savages to create the semblance of revolution.
Only insurrection can guarantee the victory of the revolution. The purpose of insurrection must be not only the complete destruction or removal of all local authorities and the replacement by new, but also the expulsion of the landlords and the seizure of their lands.
Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist forces had long been fighting the communist-inspired insurrectionists of Mao Zedong when the Japanese invaded the mainland of China. With the end of World War II and the defeat of the Japanese, the United States pressured Chiang into forming a coalition government with the communists. Through a coerced truce and enforced arms embargo, the U.S. disarmed more than 30 divisions of Chiang Kai-shek's nationalist troops. On the other hand, the Chinese communists fell heir to all the arms left by the defeated Japanese, and with the help of added armaments from Russia, Mao was soon able to ride in triumph throughout China and give 400 million Chinese agrarian reform, communist style.
This is normalization right here.
When it was time for the shooting to begin in Cuba, Fidel Castro received millions of dollars in cash and vast amounts of arms and ammunition from the Soviet Union and communist groups throughout the Western Hemisphere. At the crucial time in Castro's bid for power, the United States State Department declared an arms embargo against Batista's government, refusing to deliver even the arms that had already been paid for and were awaiting shipment. Yet, on the other hand, revolutionary sympathizers were delivering men, arms, and ammunition to Castro daily from the United States. In Algeria, Ben Bella's rebels were fighting their war of liberation with guns and ammunition sent to them through Tunisia and Morocco by the communist bloc countries. And just as the revolution was coming to a head, a slight change in the overall strategy was instituted. In 1958, France's President Charles de Gaulle came to Algeria, declaring with outstretched arms, "I have understood you. I declare that from this day forward, France considers that in the whole of Algeria there is only one category of inhabitants, that there are only Frenchmen in the full sense." De Gaulle called for the people to vote on the question of independence for Algeria, and the majority voted to remain French citizens, an integral part of France. De Gaulle said, 3.5 million men and women have cast their votes of confidence. This is a fact that commits France and Algeria to each other for all time. 2 years later, in 1960, the same French president, Charles de Gaulle, was heard to ridicule the Frenchization of the Algerians and to talk of an Algerian Algeria. It didn't take the leaders of the Army of Liberation long to change the talk of an Algerian Algeria into slogans demanding a Muslim Algeria. Ultimately, the revolutionary Ben Bella returned to Algeria and in due course established a regime of which he said, "We solemnly reply here that our socialism stems from Islam. We repeat before world opinion that we are not communists." And so it has been, with but minor variations in one country after another. Divide the people. Create the appearance of popular support. Neutralize the opposition. Precipitate mob violence. Create the semblance of a revolution. An accurate summary of Lenin's strategy for the conquest of the world is as follows.
First, we will take Eastern Europe. Next, the masses of Asia. Then we shall encircle the last bastion of capitalism, the United States of America. We will not have to attack. It will fall like overripe fruit into our hands.
By October of 1950, all of Eastern Europe was securely locked behind the Iron Curtain. By the summer of 1954, the greater part of Asia had fallen to the Kremlin's strategy and tactics. And each year, more nations lose their sovereignty to Marxist intrigues or degenerate into Soviet satellites, as communism hastens to complete the encirclement of the last bastion of capitalism. And what of the United States? How goes the battle?
And again, for anybody who's wondering, who popped in here after we started, this is 1966.
In the land of the free and the home of the brave.
So now we're going to get back into
The communist plan for the conquest of the United States was explained to the American comrades by Moscow's agent, Joseph Pogani, Country by Stalin for Revolutionary Movement. American Negro Problems was published in 1928 by Joseph Pogani using the alias John Pepper and carried the official communist line for America.
The Workers' Communist Party of America, in its fight against imperialism, must recognize clearly the tremendous revolutionary possibilities of the liberation movement of the Negro people. The Black Belt of the South, with its starving and pauperized Negro farmers and Negro agricultural working masses, with its Jim Crowism, its semi-feudal status, and its political system still bearing the earmarks of the period.
Okay, TR asked, as we've been down these roads, seeing how communism takes over, would you say it's the propaganda breaks the will of the people and down until they just let the commie ideas take over? I think it's a combination of that. I mean, definitely propaganda is at the base and the root of it. But there's also, the social movements, the optics. It's a subversion. I think you can use a subversion name would imply the propaganda and the rest, right? So it's psychological warfare, and it's done in a covert way, and it mimics much of what we see in narcissistic behavior. Believe it or not, it's funny when as we do on Unveiling Reality, as we start to break down the veils of perception, we're going to start whittling things down to the duality of things and very base objects, and a lot of that has to do with the belief in whether people are here to serve you or whether they're here to live free, and and how we come to those conclusions, right? And so I'd say subversion is the best answer for that. It's not just one thing; it's a combination of things. And as you see, there's also a process behind this, right? So they have a formulated strategy behind the subversion as well, with a time frame and a next step mentality that is guided, but almost becomes it's guided, but not necessarily fully planned, right? So they guide people, like Yuri taught us. We pull people in the direction they want to go, then we throw them into where we want them to be. In so many words, he said that. So yeah, hopefully that answered your question. If not, please ask me again in Discord later. So or must be there always be violence? Must there always be violence to enact commie ideas at some point during the revolution? Yes. There always is going to be violence, and that's going to come in the form of destabilization and crisis. Now, during these phases, where you are forming the revolution, the riots, all those things, that's all part of the plan. Kind of covered just probably slightly before you. Oh, you said you've been here before since the beginning. Yeah, it was covered in the fact that they were talking about the Watts riots and all the riots that led up to that. We compared that to how modern day summer of love kind of thing and all the other fun we've had since Obama took over. Wouldn't you guys say that kind of spun up during that time, like to a new level? I remember the Clinton years, even though he's a total piece of what. I remember those being very peaceful. I don't remember a lot of racist kind of things going on. The worst thing that happened during those years was like rap music, gangster stuff. And, I don't think that was all that ideological driven. I guess it does. A little bit it was. And, glorifying criminality is definitely a part of demoralization. But, people generally tended to get along most of my life until, the last, so many years. And now to see that happen again, let's get back there. What do you guys say?
Of slavery constitutes virtually a colony within the body of the United States of America. The Workers' Communist Party of America puts forward correctly as its central slogan, abolition of the whole system of race discrimination, full racial, social, and political equality for the Negro people. But it is necessary to supplement the struggle for the full racial, social, and political equality of the Negroes with a struggle for their right of national self-determination. Self-determination means the right to establish their own state, to erect their own government if they choose to do so.
Yeah, that wouldn't cause any problems at all, right? I mean, that's completely segregation, and it's like that's how backwards the whole Marxist idea is. It's like they'd say we want equality, like everybody's equal, and then they say, okay, now you guys can go segregate yourself. It's crazy.
The Negro communists should emphasize in their propaganda the establishment of a Negro Soviet Republic.
In 1934, the communist writers James W. Ford and James S. Allen further defined the Soviet Negro Republic.
The actual extent of this new republic would in all probability be approximately the present area in which the Negroes constitute the majority of the population. In other words, it would be approximately the present plantation area. It would be certain to include such cities as Richmond and Norfolk, Virginia.
Well, how about that? It's like they're going to name all the places I've lived.
Columbia and Charleston, South Carolina. Atlanta, Augusta, Savannah, and Macon, Georgia. Montgomery, Alabama. New Orleans and Shreveport, Louisiana. Little Rock, Arkansas, and Memphis, Tennessee.
These cities, and the cities which lie within their spheres of influence, became known in communist writings as the Black Belt of the South, and were to constitute the nucleus of a future Soviet republic.
So yeah, riots in Virginia Beach, close enough to Norfolk. They've had Norfolk riots too, plenty of them. Plenty of stuff in Richmond. Richmond's a very kind of crazy area, highly violent. Was the murder capital of Virginia for a very long time. Maybe even I don't know, it was up there for a while. Of course, Atlanta, it goes without saying. Throughout Georgia, but Atlanta for sure. But yeah, they pick these high concentration areas and this rile, they target them for the riling them up and to evidently starting their own Soviet states. Now in Georgia, there was an attempt by I guess a group of BLM people to actually have an all black town, or it's blacks. I don't know if that ever went through or not, but they were going to take that I guess evidently BLM money or some kind of stuff, and they were going to buy a whole town or like live in a whole town and say blacks only. I mean, that's kind of going backwards there. But that now we know, hey, that really is a communist idea, isn't it?
At the National Convention of the American Communist Party, held in New York City in June of 1940, James Ford, the Communist Party candidate for the vice presidency of the United States, said,
"For the Negro in the South, my people, the Negro people of America, have in the Communist Party their best defender, the unfailing champion of their cause. I accept its nomination for Vice President of the United States."
By this time, the communist champions of the Negro race had hidden the revolutionary ideas and slogans for a Soviet Negro Republic behind the humanitarian banners of jobs, security, civil rights, and peace. These humanistic issues were to provide the friction necessary to divide the American people and lay the groundwork for revolution.
I am Leonard Patterson. When I was a young man, only 23 years old,
This guy's super interesting.
I joined the Communist Party. I was a member of the National Executive Committee of the American Young Communist League. In 1930, I was the official communist candidate for election to New York State Assembly. I knew Gus Hall and other top-ranking American communists very well because I trained with them at the Lenin University in Moscow. I joined the party because I honestly thought the communists were trying to help American Negroes. I broke away from the party when it became clear to me what the communists were really up to was to use the Negro people in this country as cannon fodder in a violent and bloody revolution aimed at the establishment of the American Soviet dictatorship. It was that simple, and it is still that simple today. Make no mistake about it. What is happening in the United States right now under the banner of civil rights is exactly what has happened in China, in Cuba, in Algeria, and many other places around the world.
I'm Julia Brown. For 9 years, I was a member of the Communist Party, serving as an undercover agent for the FBI. During that time, I learned that the communist conspiracy had been planning and working for years to bring violent revolution to America. It was to be a communist revolution, but the great majority of the American people would not be allowed to realize that until it had already happened. If all goes according to the communist blueprint, Americans will believe that the chaos and violence has something to do with civil rights. Our enemies were quick to find our weakest point for their attack. They knew that racial differences could provide them with an excellent wedge to divide our people. Their strategy simply has been to keep hammering on that wedge, to drive it deeper into our social structure, to open all wounds that have long since healed, and deliberately to create new ones wherever they can.
Now he acted like a good nigga for the white folks. But I tell you, I don't want to even be around no more good niggas. I'm with them good Negroes. That's what they call Rodriguez, a good Negro. I want to be with the bad niggas because I know what's happening with the bad niggas. That's where I want to be. I want to be with the niggas. I want to be with the bad niggas who don't want to ride on the back of the bus no more. And this is what Elder Davis will call you. And the bad niggas is not going to work for $18 or $20. No, I want to be for the bad niggas who going to register and vote. I want to be for the bad niggas going to swim on any God's beach where water is flowing. I want to be with this type.
Lyndon Johnson is the biggest nigger lover in the United States.
Amen.
He may think that he can use his Justice Department with Bobby Kennedy at the head of it, and he may think that he can use J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI and the Army to force us white people here in St. Augustine and other parts of the nation to mix up with niggers. But if he sends troops in here and puts a bayonet behind every one of us, we still will not mix up with a bunch of black savages.
I'd like to say, in a real sense, not fellow freedom fighters, but fellow slaves. For we all are slaves, not only in this society, not only in this community, but all over this nation and all over the world. What you're doing here is very significant and it's very important.
Then you follow up your friends and acquaintances and ask them if they want to help put this fight over to save this country from the onslaught of integration. You know, the system is they want to throw white children and colored children into the melting pot of integration, out of which will come a conglomerated, mulatto, mongrel class of people. Both races will be destroyed in such a movement. I, for one,
Damn
under
Democrats.
God, will die before I yield 1 inch to that kind of a movement in America.
But not only has the black man got a champion, they call him Martin Luther King, we call him Lucifer. If God has some champions of the white man, and you can name Connie Lynch as one of them. Today, tomorrow,
There's the Dixiecrats for you, man. It's the way it was back then. And you gotta realize that the Marxists were on in both groups, obviously. Right? Both groups stirring up trouble from both sides.
and forever. Amen. And if this nigger thinks he can stir the niggers up, I'll also inform him that the white men can be stirred up to defend what is rightfully
And so the seeds of dissension were sown among both the black and the white races. And inexorably, the people of the United States were being divided according to plan. Among the so-called downtrodden and oppressed, among the supposedly starving and pauperized Negroes, the enemy was referred to as Whitey, Mr. Charlie, the Man, and the Ofe. Phase 1 was well on its way. Now it was time to implement Phase 2, create the appearance of popular support, beguile the people of the United States and the world into believing the pious fraud that the civil rights uprising, led by a handful of agitators, was a popular movement of the whole Negro race in the United States.
Now, this doesn't mean that there isn't a legitimate need for the advancement of civil rights for many of our Negro citizens. Of course, there is a need there. Otherwise, communist agitators posing as civil rights leaders could never hope to enlist massive support for their schemes. The aspirations of Negroes for full equality were not created by communists, but they are used by communists in such a way that idealistic Americans of all races can be tricked into implementing the blueprint for revolution. Having been on the inside of the Communist Party, it's easy for me to recognize this revolutionary agitation in disguise. But the average American finds it's hard to believe that something as worthy and noble sounding as a civil rights movement could possibly be a communist maneuver.
Communism must be built with non-communist hands.
The revolutionary accepts reform in order to use it as a cover for his illegal work.
By concealing the true communist objectives behind appealing slogans and pretended humanitarian goals, the conspirators are able to dupe hundreds of uninformed opportunists and misguided idealists into supplying the non-communist hands needed in the overthrow of this republic.
Yeah, and now it's evolved, hasn't it? It's not only that, but it goes into lifestyles, and now we got the gender thing, and we got all this other stuff that goes on, following the same kind of model from people that have had the same type of radical activist education.
Deceived, some of the Negroes cry for liberation through the slogan, "Freedom Now." The Democratic slogan, "One Man, One Vote," has gained wide acceptance. But perhaps the most popular slogan is "Venceremos," the rallying cry of the deluded peasants of Cuba, Haiti, and Venezuela. Venceremos, we shall overcome, is now the rallying cry of the deluded peoples of the United States.
We shall overcome.
When I was studying communist tactics and strategy in Moscow, my instructors emphasized the importance of using honest grievances and popular slogans as a smokescreen to cover up the true nature of the revolution. We were taught how to use propaganda and arouse the emotion of the masses. We learned how to set one group against the other and to make them hate each other. We learned the necessity of having martyrs, and we were even told how to create our own martyrs if they did not automatically result from the atmosphere of hatred. We were taught the importance of getting large masses of people into the street for marches and demonstrations. And finally, we were instructed in ways to take off riots and make them spread and to keep them going. When I returned to the United States, I was immediately given practical training. I participated in so-called nonviolent demonstrations that were deliberately calculated to irritate white people into violence against us. I personally was in charge of organizing a march on Washington to dramatize the Scottsboro Boys case. In New York, about 1935, a Negro boy was reported killed by the owner of a store while in the act of stealing some merchandise. Communist Party headquarters decided to make a march out of the boy. So we went right to work, putting out handbills and holding open air meetings. In less than a half hour after we started, there was a race riot at 125th Street, complete with smashing windows of white storekeepers, looting, and all the rest. I'm not speaking of things I read about. These are things I personally participated in.
As it was in Cuba, so it was in Algeria.
Hold up. Someone voted yes in the poll, right? Were you ever taught any of this history in school? Oh, shoot. I misspelled that. Embarrassing. Is school. Well, just trying to go a little fast there. But yeah, I'm interested to hear that. Are you mean like some of the history or like I'm talking about this particular history, like the history of the communist infiltration in some of these civil rights movement and the civil rights movement and other things, right? So I would be surprised if you were taught that. Then good on your teacher, man. Good on your teacher. Very true.
And so it is in the United States. In Jackson, Mississippi, Medgar Evers, State Field Secretary for the NAACP, was shot in the back by an unknown assassin as he was entering his home. After lying in state in Mississippi, the body of World War II infantry GI Medgar Evers was sent to Washington, D.C. for burial in Arlington National Cemetery. Now a victim of the very communist agitation he had helped promote, Medgar Evers was able to further serve communist purposes by being glorified as a martyr in the supposed fight of the Negro people for freedom and justice. Medgar Evers' remains were buried with full military honors and nationwide news coverage. As it was in Cuba, so it was in Algeria. And so it is in the United States. Mysterious bombings by assailants unknown plague the lives and property of the Negro people and serve to intimidate those who might speak out against the conspirators. The bombing of this Birmingham, Alabama church claimed the lives of 4 little girls attending Sunday school. A memorial service was held in Washington, D.C. for the 4 young victims, after which the mourners demonstrated their grief before the White House and the press. A martyr that rallied the sympathies of the nation was the lovely Viola Gregg Liuzzo, who was shot to death while driving between Selma and Montgomery, Alabama, with a Negro civil rights worker. The American press told their shocked readers of her 5 children and husband, and her righteous zeal for justice that caused her to go to Alabama to help the American Negro gain the right to vote. This photo of Mrs. Liuzzo, taken during the Selma to Montgomery march and just prior to her death, points up the fact that the press failed to mention that the photo used to gain the sympathies of the nation was a high school photo taken almost 20 years earlier. That her 5 children were by 3 husbands, and that her name had been removed from Michigan's eligible voter list in accordance with state law because she had not used her voting privilege for 6 years.
We were taught how to use propaganda, how to arouse the emotion of the masses. We learned how to set one group against the other and to make them hate each other. We learned to be sensitive to having martyrs, and were even told how to create our own martyrs if they didn't automatically result from the atmosphere of hatred.
Divide the people, then create the appearance of popular support. And if any of the alert, informed citizens call attention to the true revolutionary goals behind the humanitarian slogans, move into phase 3 and neutralize the opposition. One effective way to neutralize any opposition is to liquidate it. In the summer of 1965, a respected Negro farmer in Alabama dared to speak out critically against the civil rights revolutionaries. In this cabin in late August, 87-year-old Perry Smaw struggled with an assailant who said he had come to get Perry's tongue. The aged Negro's skull was crushed with a cast-iron frying pan, the attacker striking with such force that the skillet was broken. Then the intruder pulled Perry's tongue from his mouth and with a butcher knife cut it off all the way back to the old man's tonsils. Perry Smaw, the man who dared defy the conspirators, died 6 days later. In China, Cuba, and Algeria, terror was also a most effective weapon in intimidating and neutralizing the opposition.
Sorry, I don't really know where these
And
these
there's
parts are
another,
at, so
even more widely
figure eyes for a
used
second.
method of neutralizing
I'll tell you
and
when it's back
paralyzing
on.
opposition to communism's conquests.
Should have been more aware. I
We
will
can
next
and
time.
must
Lynn,
write in a language
where does
which
it go?
sows among the masses
It's good
hate,
now.
revulsion, and scorn toward those who disagree with us.
Members and front organizations must continually embarrass, discredit, and degrade our critics. When obstructionists become too irritating, label them as fascist or Nazi or anti-Semitic. Constantly associate those who oppose us with those names which already have a bad smell. The association will, after enough repetition, become fact in the public mind.
By duping the American public into turning a deaf ear to the voices of warning because the topics were controversial or because the patriots themselves had been ridiculed as extremists, racists, fright peddlers, the conspirators were ready to move one step closer to their hidden goals by
we can just look at this history and see it in action right in front of our eyes today with real examples that we all live and talk about all the time. Yeah, think about how many people talk about this. How many people are on YouTube? How many people are on different platforms talking about this this topic all the time, these topics all the time, but have no idea the root of where these things are coming from. You know, they'll talk about it every day, but never mention the past that concocted these ideas and these strategies and how they got here. You know, you hear about it all the time. You just flip on any show, any newscast, right? Any newscast, you know, wherever you like to go to listen to news, right? They'll talk about this, they'll complain about this, but they'll never tie it back into its origins. It's just amazing. And the people were doing it back then too, but we're a lot more connected now because of the information age. Yeah, just I hope you guys are just amazed as I am about all this stuff. It's like, it's pretty wild, isn't it?
A precipitating mob violence.
Riots, demonstrations, street battles, detachments of a revolutionary army. Such are the stages in the development of the popular uprising.
The Communist Party will educate and organize the working masses for mass strikes and mass demonstrations. It is through struggles that the working masses are prepared for the final conflict for power. As these strikes grow in number and intensity, they acquire political character through unavoidable collision and open combat with the capitalistic state. Mass action culminates in insurrection and civil war.
You've been studying history, studying civics, but right now you got to put your history and your civics in the streets. You got to make the Constitution real. You got to make democracy real. Since 1960, since February the 1st, 1960, more than 50,000 of your fellow students have been arrested and jailed, beaten, faced police doors and water hoses. Before we see real freedom, before we be able to walk down these streets with a sense of dignity and with a sense of pride and walk in freedom, no doubt there will be more jailings, more beating, more water hoses, more dogs.
The other thing is this: we are determined that this city will not celebrate its quadricentennial as a segregated city if that celebration takes place. We plan to use everything within our power and all of the nonviolent weapons at our disposal to dramatize this blatant injustice and to demand that the federal government not put a cent in this city unless it decides to face the realities of desegregation.
Right time. When Martin Luther King said march, we're going to have our marching shoes. And you know they've kicked us around a long time, haven't they? Yeah. And so many of us we've come up in life without any shoes at all. And if it becomes necessary for us to march without shoes, we'll march barefooted. I don't like the way you're clapping tonight. Are you ready to march? Are you ready to march? Then we are not afraid of dogs. Are we, children? So many of us, we were raised up with dogs.
She was like, say what? This guy's like, say what?
And we have had
dogs.
to, we have had to live the life of dogs right here in the United States of America. I want you to raise your hand high tonight. Everybody that's ready to march, raise your hand high. Raise it high. Are you ready to march? Are you ready to march? If you're ready to march, I want you to raise both of your hands above your head. I want you to stand up on your feet. Keep your hands high. Now bring them together and clap them together. Everybody wants freedom. Everybody wants freedom. Everybody.
And so, many were tricked into helping create the appearance of popular support for a conspiracy that hid its true objectives behind appealing slogans and humanitarian goals. A detachment of the deceived staged sit-ins. A handful of the hoaxed made freedom rides. A portion picketed and protested, while still others boycotted buses. And then more of the deluded mobs marched and demonstrated. As it was in Cuba, where the leaders of the humanistic revolution marched with arms locked in camaraderie, so it is in the United States, where the leaders of the freedom movement march with arms locked in brotherhood. As it was in Cuba, where the comrades marched arm in arm to shouts of Venceremos, so it is in the United States, where the brothers march to the strains of We Shall Overcome.
We shall overcome. We shall overcome someday.
In 1965, Martin Luther King explained the purposes of the marches and demonstrations as follows. The goal of the demonstrations in Selma, as elsewhere, is to dramatize the existence of injustice and to bring about the presence of justice by methods of nonviolence. Long years of experience indicate to us that Negroes can achieve this goal when four things occur. First, nonviolent demonstrations go into the streets to exercise their constitutional rights. Second, racists resist by unleashing violence against them. Third, Americans of conscience, in the name of decency, demand federal intervention and legislation. Fourth, the administration, under mass pressure, initiates measures of immediate intervention and remedial legislation.
Ready to march with them? I didn't hear from everybody. Are you ready to march?
As Martin Luther King said, demonstrators staged a huge march on Washington, D.C. to dramatize their demands. They staged demonstrations across the country.
As time went on, Martin Luther King changed his position on these things. While the need for the Jim Crow laws to go away, and I'd like to do a deep dive on the Jim Crow laws. Like I'm sitting here thinking about it, and I want to say something more about it, and I'm realizing that I don't understand the origin of them that well. I have a feeling that it's correlated to what Thomas Sowell was talking about in our first episode, and but I want to be certain about that. So I'm going to do a little bit of homework and deep dive and check my facts and make sure I have this straight. And then I'll bring that information to you guys. But I would like to go and talk about this Jim Crow laws and how this came into being and who really pushed for those. I think it has something to do with what Thomas was talking about the other night with the northern expansion, like of the moves, like the from the south to the north. But I want to be confirmed that before I make a statement about it. But yeah, they're going to make references to Martin Luther King in a certain way in this film because it's 1966, right? But I know that towards the end of his life, he was more Republican and had come around to the fact that he didn't want to be involved with some of this stuff. If I understand it right, another one I need to do a little bit more research on. Just wanted to bring that up.
And as Martin Luther King said, violence was unleashed. Then, accordingly, the federal government intervened and a vicious legislative step on the road to tyranny was enacted in the form of the Civil Rights Bill of 1964.
Their cause must be our cause too. Because it's not just Negroes, but really it's all of us who must overcome the crippling legacy of bigotry and injustice. And we shall overcome.
Black and white together. Black and white together.
Now we mean business. Are you ready to march with us?
As Martin Luther King said, the demonstrators staged a huge march from Selma to Montgomery, Alabama, to dramatize their demands. They staged demonstrations across the country. And as Martin Luther King had said, violence was unleashed against them. Then, accordingly, the federal government intervened, and still another vicious legislative step toward tyranny was enacted in the form of the Voting Rights Bill of 1965.
And these enemies too, poverty, disease, and ignorance, we shall overcome.
Truth shall make us free. Truth shall make us free.
I broke away from the party when it became clear to me what the communists were really up to was to use the Negro people of this country as cannon fodder in a violent and bloody revolution aimed at the establishment of an American Soviet dictatorship.
Give me that old freedom spirit. Give me that old freedom spirit. It's good enough for me.
It was to be a communist revolution. But the great majority of the American
being
people
here.
would not be allowed to realize that until it had already happened. If all goes according to the communist blueprint, Americans will believe that the chaos and violence has something to do with civil rights.
Make no mistake about it. What is happening in the United States right now under the banner of civil rights is exactly what has happened in China, in Cuba, in Algeria, and in many other places around the world.
The goal of the international communist conspiracy is world domination. They have thus far been highly successful.
Love the stream. Thanks for this. My question is, how do I be the change I want to see in the world in 2023? It's overwhelming. When what feels like most other people are unkind, it feels impossible. Well, the whole thing about being the change you want to see is just doing it, right? Like, I'm just doing it. And you just got to do it, and you can't worry about other people validating that, right? They're either going to get it or they're not going to get it. But sometimes just a little bit is enough to plant a seed that will flourish and bring the light truth into their lives. If it's not there, bring the warmth of kindness into their heart if it's not there. Sometimes you just never know. But you just got to keep on going on. You can't live your life wanting, seeking, or needing validation from other people to be the change that you want to be. Part of solution culture is getting out of that prison, that box that people want to put us in, man, telling us how we're supposed to act, how we're supposed to feel, how we're supposed to talk, how we're supposed to look, how we're supposed to behave. It's this control, subvert, covert kind of controlling that people can have over one another. And the strongest thing you can ever do in your life is to stop needing or seeking anyone's validation when you're doing when you're doing what you're doing. It can surround you before you even know it, and you can succumb to it faster. You can realize, because it's an exploit in the human OS, right? In our human OS that we carry in our brain, it's an exploit, and it's a psychological exploit that people who are crafty and clever understand instinctively how to exploit. That's at least my experience with it. And here's the deal: you're going to meet one asshole every day, right? And there's a lot of broken and hurt people out there, and they'll be very unkind. There's a lot of people that don't produce, and they'll be very unkind. There's a lot of people that feel inadequate and jealous, and they'll be very unkind. There's a lot of people that are do sneaky things and have low integrity, and they'll be very unkind. And that's a product of our society right now. It's just the way it is. But we have to be the light. We have to carry the light with us. We have to shine through it. And that's the only way that we can be the change that we want to be. It starts with us. So have that inner faith. Believe in yourself. Know that whatever's happening right or wrong right now is happening for the best reason overall. And it will come to fruition. You will see that if you keep that faith and keep being yourself. And don't let any other people drag you down. Right? Don't let them drag you down. Right? That even when they drag you down, they still aren't fulfilled. So don't even give them a little bit. Just raise your head up, say, I hear you, and move right along. That's my best advice with that on. And good luck with that. And do it, Flair. Be the change you want to be. And no, it's not an easy route at all. It's not. The easy route's because the conformity is an easy route, isn't it? Because then you're just following somebody else at that point. But no, the hardest thing to be in this world is to be yourself and not take some flack for it. So be yourself. It's worth the flack.
In accomplishing the step-by-step objectives necessary for reaching that goal. In the United States, the communist plans call for two revolutions at once. A revolution of a supposedly oppressed proletariat or working class against a capitalistic system that is supposed to breed wage slavery, unemployment, poverty, crises, and war. The second revolution is a revolt of the supposedly poor and oppressed Negroes of the Black Belt against the supposed lynching, segregation, social ostracism, and exploitation of the white man. Currently, what the communists call their Negro Revolutionary Movement, now masquerading behind the humanitarian banners of civil rights, is contributing tremendous momentum to the communist plans to take over the United States. Divide the people. Get them fighting among themselves rather than their common enemy. Create the appearance of popular support through a favorable press and the use of terror, intimidation, and the creation of martyrs. Make the world believe the revolution is a popular one, particularly among those being liberated. Neutralize the opposition. When obstructionists to the cause become too irritating, label them as fascist, Nazi, anti-Semitic, extremist, racist, controversial. Precipitate mob violence. Get the mobs into the streets. March and demonstrate. As the demonstrations grow in number and intensity, they will acquire political character through the desired collision and open combat with the forces of law and order. Since mass action culminates in insurrection and civil war, what of the fifth principle of the communist strategy? Create the semblance of revolution.
Had not this rotten, fascist, racist cop, lieutenant, that killed the young Powell boy, had he not killed the boy very well might have died in South Vietnam in the name of freedom. Could have very well have died in South Vietnam in the name of freedom. In the name of freedom. I was also asked to tell you not to get your passion so high, not to get too worked up. However, I think many of us are going to have to choose where we're going to die at. Where we're going to die at. We're going to have to decide whether we're going to die on the streets of the United States or in South Vietnam. I would choose the United States myself. I would choose the United States myself.
From Havana, Cuba, free territory of the Americas, Radio Free Dixie invites you to listen to the free voice of the South. Stay with us for music, news, and commentary by Robert F. Williams.
Robert F. Williams, a fugitive wanted by the state of North Carolina and the Justice Department, broadcasts weekly revolutionary messages beamed into the United States from Cuba.
We shall take the torch of freedom and justice into the streets of America, and we shall set the last great stronghold of Yankee imperialism ablaze with our battle cry of freedom. Freedom now or death. For our people.
In the monthly newsletter published in Cuba and sent into the United States through Canada, the revolutionist Williams tells the Negroes of this nation, we must be willing to suffer jail. We must be willing to suffer death. We must be willing to kill for freedom.
There are Gestapo policemen on every street corner. It's just like Mississippi, and I predict things are going to grow worse. In fact, I think policemen are going to be dead before this situation is over.
During the summers of 1964 and 1965, the demonstrations became riots, finally culminating in the worst race riot in this nation's history in the Watts district of Los Angeles. Across the United States, law enforcement officers were dead, and Negroes did die in the streets, and the situation was far from over. 7 days after the rioting broke out in Watts, a new newspaper started publication, the voice of all the oppressed and exploited. Calling for the workers of the world to unite, this new voice of the people declared that
all the people of the U.S. who oppose U.S. imperialism wish to thank the Communist Party of China and the Chinese people for their pledge of support for the people of Los Angeles in their struggle against U.S. imperialism.
In keeping with communist principles and expectations, the atmosphere of hatred generated in the Watts riot resulted in 32 martyrs for the cause of liberation.
In their memory, we pledge to destroy U.S. imperialism.
In 1928, and again in 1934, and still again in 1965, we hear,
the Negro people constitute a nation in the black belt of the South.
And lest there should be any misunderstanding, Nobel Peace Prize winner Martin Luther King followed the example of Lenin Peace Prize winner Fidel Castro and Lenin Peace Prize winner Ben Bella, and protested that, I am sick and tired of people saying this movement has been infiltrated by communists and communist sympathizers. There are as many communists in this freedom movement as there are Eskimos in Florida.
Wah, wah.
In the past hour, we have offered only a brief survey of the material that's available to support the charge that the civil rights movement, as we know it today, is simply part of a worldwide movement organized and directed by communists to enslave all mankind. There are hundreds of additional witnesses and thousands of additional facts to testify to the communist involvement in the American civil rights movement. But the limitations of time prevent their inclusion here. We urge you to continue your studies of these unpleasant truths and gain a more complete understanding of the conspirators' plans to subjugate the United States.
Coming up, I'm going to show you the
Begin by
newest example
reading
here.
It's Very Simple, The True Story of Civil Rights by Alan Stang, The Civil Rights Packet, and the other books and pamphlets on civil rights that are available from one of the American opinion libraries across the nation. We also urge you to resolve first that you will not fall victim to the communist plot to set race against race, American against American. And second, that you will now join with other patriots in a positive program and concerted action to save for our children and their children this once glorious country and humane civilization which we ourselves inherited.
All right. Well, there you have it. I hope everybody learned something today. I'm going to show you guys right now exactly why it's important to understand these origins and why it's important to help reach people earlier in life so that we can kind of get these ideas replaced with real Americanism and true liberty ideas of liberty, right? That's one thing that we're not taught in school anymore to any real degree is what is liberty and what does that mean? Now, in the coming weeks on Unveiling Reality, we will eventually get to the point where we're going to be reviewing some of Ron Paul's speeches during his campaign run. I thought that would be a great time in case you missed some of these, so you could feel what it was like to be part of that. He always had I watched all of his campaign trail speeches, and a lot of them were similar. But he had a great delivery, and he really made everybody understand liberty again. And his description of it isn't any kind of hard libertarian, people will throw Ayn Rand's name out there every time. No. It's like, no, it was the truth about American liberty and what this Constitution in this country was supposed to be about. So we'll go into that on that show, but I just wanted to kind of put that out there for you guys. But hey, I want to show you something real quick. This isn't that long, but it's I would say a little bit shocking and a little bit like when you look at it, you're going to be like, I want to see how this plays out. Now, this is a story that I came across that let me just move it over out of my way if I may. There you go. And it's a long crime, so they're probably going to cut me on this one. I don't know if they will or not. I think they only have it out for Ricada. But anyways, this is a story about a woman who went into a Target and chased after the Target manager and chased after the theft prevention specialist that was there, and demanded reparations in the middle of the night. There's some indication that she had been maybe drinking, but listen to the rhetoric and listen to what she says and the outcome, and watch what happens in this story. So let me get it up here real quick. And when I saw this, it made me think about this episode. That's why I wanted to include it, because it really shows the dangers of this subversion and where it can lead who's probably a reasonable person at heart, and down a bad path and get them in trouble. And they have this illusion that it's doing something when it's not. So let's go ahead and get this rolling. Let's see. I'm checking the chat here real quick to say what's going on a walk. Hey, enjoy your walk, TB Flair. It's good that you're out there. I got up this morning and rode a bike for an hour, and I feel great. So I'm going to try to keep doing that more often. And we had a great exercise session this morning. So I'm getting better sleep and more exercise. And I hope you guys all do the same. Yes, this story. Oh, wait, hold on. You know this one, Flair? Yes, this story. They got you. Well, don't blow the ending. Jesus. All right, here we go.
Man, like, I need you to back up or leave. Like, well, we can't do that for you. So she started charging at me. I came all the way back in.
And at first, you may think this is a little extreme, but watch the whole video. And something I want to point out about this situation for this man who was kind of forced into doing this. I guess he kind of had been in situations like this before, and obviously had a lot of fear going on. But she had a big bag sitting right under her arm, and she could have easily pulled a knife out on him or a gun out on him back in this room, and he wouldn't have been able to do anything about it. So I think that the part of the practice here is that if you're cornered like this, right? Pay attention to this. If you're cornered and you can't do anything and you feel threatened, you can actually go on offense. So here we go. It is
My
legal to do
office
that.
into an enclosed space, and I hit her in the face.
A shocking moment caught on camera.
He warned her
when a
like
Target
100
employee
times.
punches a customer in the face after she cornered him in an office.
She would not stop invading his space because she had been taught that.
When people are backed into a corner, they can choose. They can choose to do the right thing, or they can choose to lash out.
Hey, you were in the wrong here, just so we're
I
clear.
held the.
She says the whole altercation was her way to take a stand.
This is my Rosa Parks moment, dude. Don't play with me.
The incident happened on October 22nd of last year at a Target in Blue Ash, Ohio. Security video shows 37-year-old Karen Ivory checking out at the register. When the bill surpasses $1,000, Ivory says she won't have enough.
This is her order.
Okay.
That's $1,000. She said, I'm not going to have enough money to pay for this. I need to talk to the manager. She's not going to be walking by.
Body camera video captures Target manager Ashley Meyer describing to police what happened.
So I came around and I was like, hey, what can I do for you?
Okay.
And usually it's like the price is wrong or whatever. She starts going on this spiel about about how I've had a privileged life and she's been disadvantaged, and then said that she was asking Target to make reparations for her. And I said, that's not something we can do tonight. If you need a donation, you can call tomorrow. I can put you in touch with the HR person, but that isn't something I can do for you right now tonight.
Okay.
And then she was like, you need to put me in touch with someone tonight. And I was like, I can't. There isn't.
Okay.
Strange. Yeah. And then she got really close to me. Mm-hmm. So I put my hands up and backed up, and she followed me. She was like breathing into my eyeballs.
And they go to the videotapes too, by the way. Hey, Vicky.
Yeah. So she got really close to me. I put my hands up. I touched her shoulders because she was coming into my space.
Okay.
And then she because I touched her, she after that and just started screaming really loudly and backed me up against the soda machine.
Okay.
And then that's when our security person, she called our security person.
Security video shows the incident unfold as Ivory approaches the manager and gets in her face. After that, a loss prevention manager approaches.
So what happened?
She
scene secure at 2046.
Okay. Came up. I tried to verbally de-escalate. She told me that she wanted to wreck it out, and I told her we couldn't do that.
Okay.
And then she said, "Excuse me," and I was like, "Man, I need you to back up or leave. But we can't do that for you." So she started charging at me. I came all the way back into my office into an enclosed space, and I hit her in the face.
Surveillance video shows Ivory run after the manager and into his office. When she approaches, he punches her in the face. While the security video does not have audio, the manager later described the incident to police on body camera video.
So I tried to literally close her out, but at that point she was pretty much running. So she barreled her way in, and then kept coming into my office.
Okay. Yes. And you just hit her, and that's it.
Hit her right in the face, right in the jaw.
After the manager punches Ivory in the face, Security video shows him calling 911.
What did your note say? The lady came in and punched her man, or her manager punched her?
Yeah, some sort of shenanigans. Didn't say anything about a manager. Said somebody came into an office,
I thought it
started
was
assaulting
an
him.
employee when
Yeah.
assumed it was a manager.
Allegedly, this chick's impaired.
When officers arrive, body camera footage captures Ivory arguing with the manager as officers work to get her information.
I tried to close you out of my office and you just kept on pushing your way in.
That's right.
No, sir. I didn't push my way in.
Yes,
I
you
came.
did.
No, I came around the corner quickly.
Hey, would you
I did not
both
push
quit
you
talking?
on.
Hey, no.
Excuse
Let's
you?
Stop talking. When I'm telling you, you stop talking. Okay?
Do you know who I am?
We'll figure that out when I get your ID.
Ivory later tells police officers the incident stemmed
He'll
from
figure
her
it out.
request for reparations on her purchase.
So what caused the issue then here today?
Because I came in.
Actually, kind of.
Target is somewhat alone from me. And we were gonna have a big discussion here. And I asked them to
Who are you going to have this big discussion with?
Target, whatever in Target I needed to speak with.
Okay.
I asked
So I ran
nicely, the young lady.
He's showing him the store surveillance video in the back there. Oh, you don't see my cursor. Never mind. So yeah, well, like, what got into this woman's head that made her think that this was the right thing to do? A lot of programming. You gotta, she's got this whole narrative going on.
Actually, no.
And there she was wanting $1,000 worth. Who goes spends $1,000 at Target in the middle of the night? $1,000. The whole time she's picking out stuff
Just to separate you from your inner space. Yeah.
that she's thinking about this.
Why did you feel threatened?
Depends on, I don't know what this discussion was about. What were you asking her to do?
Reach out to her manager so we can have a larger discussion about how money works and how provision works and how it's been working.
Do you hear what she said? I'm gonna try to boost this a little bit for you guys. She said it so we could have a discussion, like in the middle of the night in a Target when no one's at work. It's like,
A very long way.
Can you elaborate a little bit, go into further detail?
Sure.
Ivory calls the incident her, quote, Rosa Parks moment.
Sure. I was asking for the support of my
there you go. That's in her mind. She's being Rosa Parks, right? She thinks she's fighting the system here by demanding free stuff at a Target in the middle of the night. But I mean, did she go there with this intention? I mean, $1,000 worth of stuff that didn't happen by accident, did it? I mean, it just blows my mind, and this is sad.
to come down to me in a big way to have a money conversation. There are people subjugated and locked out of things. We have decided we were not going to have a bigger conversation. I decided to take a stand. This is my Rosa Parks moment, dude. Don't play with me.
Body camera video captures.
And like, you think that in her head, like, We Shall Overcome's playing? I don't know. I feel bad for this woman because I know that all this stuff isn't normal behavior. It's not something that everybody every day thinks about and is going to go do. And here she is in this position where I guess she wants a bunch of stuff, and who knows what she had been watching on TV or who she'd been listening to before she decided to go down to the Target, right? But for somebody got into her head and said, "Oh, you just got to go demand your stuff, girl," and boom, there she is, getting laid out by a security officer for breaking the law. I mean, for cornering someone in a threatening way.
Ivory speaking with officers for more than 30 minutes, stressing the statement she was trying to make.
We're having a conversation about how to reconcile the fact that some people benefited off of a system that was bringing other people. I asked nicely to have that conversation.
Okay, what were you asking for?
For her to connect me with who I could talk to.
What was your purpose of that further conversation? What were you going to ask that person for to do?
To break the lies around money.
What's that mean?
We all know money has not been treating everybody equally.
Okay.
Money is not the only way for things to happen. It's not.
Were you asking them to make a donation, essentially? Or to let you have them for free?
No,
What was it?
I was coming up to the limit of where I had money. I was trying to ask if Target would comp me the rest, and we would have a conversation, a bigger conversation about why, because I know the heart of this place.
Okay.
It's the right place for me to have this conversation.
Conversation. It sounds like a very programmed word when you're hearing it as the anchor for her entire story here, that she's just coming down to have a polite conversation, right? That's why she was backing someone into a room. That's why she was all up in someone's face, right? That's not a conversation, lady. And like whoever told her that was a conversation, and just to manipulate language to get away with doing something that is threatening, did her wrong.
Target's a good company.
Exactly. And I was trying to have a hard conversation in a safe place.
Yeah. So did you?
More terminology, hard conversation and safe place, right? We're starting to be able to hear it, right? Now we know where she's kind of getting this from, right?
No. People hit me for that. I did it the right way. I went through the right steps. They kept. The reason the problem why money doesn't work right is because it blocks people at checkpoints. And I'm tired of people locking good people out. You don't get paid what you deserve nearly as much because choosing.
What do you want to bet she was marching to defund the police at some point? Hey, Jacob, how's it going? Great to see you.
To do the right thing in this world costs us monetarily. That's not fair. The system is rigged against people doing the right thing.
When Ivory is told she's now trespassing in Target, she becomes visibly upset.
Trespass from Target.
I'm sorry?
As of today, you're trespass from Target.
On the basis of you getting money?
Ma'am, let's go.
Outside.
No, that is not going to
Either
happen.
you walk out on your own or in handcuffs.
Oh, I will be arrested for this cause.
Okay, come on.
No, I'm not gonna move.
Don't make this
Nope.
more
You're
difficult than it
gonna
has
know.
to be.
It's gonna be on camera. Where are you holding your lines at?
Come on.
Ivory then pushes back, arguing she should not be removed from the store.
Look at the time frame on this, by the way. I just want to point this out. Look at the time frame up here in the corner. You see at 8:50, it jumped from 8:46, I believe. Look at how long these two cops try to convince her not to have them cuff her and drag her out and make a scene. Like, listen to how long these guys work to try to get her to realize that she doesn't want to do this, right? That this is not going to be good for her, and they would do it respectfully and walk her out without cuffs on and make a big deal out of it. I think that's pretty damn nice.
All this is,
So he gets the right to kick me out after he hits me. He didn't bowl that. He can't bowl that up in management.
He is speaking on behalf of the company at this
Really,
point.
exactly. So he can speak on behalf of the company at that level, but he couldn't do it there.
I wasn't out there. I'm sure tensions were a little different than they are at this moment in time. So.
No, you're going to reconcile that. You're not going to give me any more lies. You will tell the truth about the situation. No. You are trying to arrest me for him hitting me.
Correct. You are under arrest.
Yes.
You're under arrest for menacing and disorderly conduct. Okay? Now, here's what we would like to do. We would rather you walk outside and not make a big deal. If you're going to make a big deal, we're going to have to handcuff you and do all that other stuff.
Yes, you will.
Let's go.
Go ahead, stand up then.
I'm not going to
Don't get resisting too. Okay?
Let's do it.
Let's not.
If we're going to go into it, let's do it. If you're going to hold every line, you know what happened here.
With that, officers tell Ivory the video evidence is against her.
I know. I just watched the video.
I asked to open a conversation, and he's still blocking me out, and you guys are protecting me.
Ma'am, you chased the one employee all the way to the front, okay? You made contact with her body by pushing your body into hers. I just watched it clear as day on the video.
Okay.
He then came out, and you followed him all the way back here.
Okay.
Making him fear for his safety. You backed him into an office, and you got hit in the face, unfortunately.
When people are backed into a corner, they can choose. They can choose to do the right thing, or they can choose to lash out.
Okay, you were in the wrong here, just so we're
I
clear.
held the line.
You didn't hold
And
the line.
I moved my line continuously. I asked, and when they did not respect They were
Not holding it.
gatekeeping me. Like the whole world has kept people.
You were free to leave at any time.
Absolutely.
But you didn't.
Absolutely.
So
because it wasn't
you
right.
amplified the situation. No, you wanted something
when the
for
laws are not right,
you wanted something.
you make a stand so they can change.
Look at her head. Look at her fist. Look at her fist. Hold on. See that? This is all programming. This is why this whole thing that we've been talking about tonight, the programming of people to be divisive and to dig at wounds and to all these things that we've been talking about tonight. This is what it's produced right here. And this is uncool. That's this woman has been manipulated into thinking these things and doing these things. And yes, it's her choice, but I still feel like, you know, the problem is it's been going on a long time, and she's just I'm not gonna, I guess, a victim, a product of it. It's more better to say that.
Are you ready to go outside?
If the laws are meant to hold people down, you will fight for me, my community.
Let's go outside.
Responding officers explained the Target manager was not in the wrong and will not be charged.
That doesn't, just because your intentions were good, does not make this any less illegal, unfortunately.
Right.
So we
But
have,
what happens when the
so give me 2
laws
seconds.
are not okay for people?
I
We need to talk
have
about
to
it.
enforce the laws that are in place.
See this
And that is our job,
recommendation?
that is
Oh
our
my
goal.
god!
He's not getting
Take over
arrested
that
for
stuff.
assault.
Look at the time, 12:30 now.
Ivory maintains she did not get physical with any Target employees.
No, there was not any times that my hands came up to do anything to anybody.
You're not being
When I
charged
did,
with
I
assault.
stood my ground.
Okay, you
And
were
when
wrong.
people, no, I wasn't. Standing your ground is not wrong if you're standing it in the truth.
Finally, Ivory allows officers to handcuff her.
I need you to turn around, put your hands behind your back. You're under arrest. Thank you.
15, 20. There you go.
She's then
That's how long
escorted
they
to a
worked on
squad
that.
car outside the
Save
store.
her the
She
embarrassment.
continues to speak with
But-
officers, saying she was forcing an
the struggle.
important conversation.
When it gets to a point where a young man reached out and hit an older black woman,
Regardless of age, race, anything.
you don't hit somebody.
You don't
Look
hit
how
people,
base that
but I
cop
can
is.
also understand why he did. He was defending himself. You
How-
chased him into a closed office where he had no point of exit.
Right? That was the point. I was forcing him to have a
You
conversation.
were forcing him to become scared and in fear.
When asked if she could have handled the situation in a different way, Ivory repeats her same stance.
We haven't been able to see and communicate with each other, and that's what I was trying to do. And I asked nicely, and I got refused, and I stood a line that scared them, and they lashed out.
So do you think you could have approached it in a different manner than how we approached it today and probably got the same goal, the same end?
How do you expect I'm asking for something at the register to be done. The cashier couldn't do it for me.
We're trying.
They asked her to bubble it up to a manager. That's what you do. You take it up the chain of command.
Absolutely you do. Yeah.
But this is the problem. My people have been trying to take it up the chain of command, and they are getting smacked back down because the laws are not in their favor.
You know, she was
When
making
you
some
take a hard
faces,
stand,
and you saw how she said, like,
I
excuse
just
you?
got hit.
Like when she said that, you
Ivory
can
was
see how she
later
really is.
convicted of disorderly conduct. She was sentenced to 1 day in jail and fined $110. Reporting for Long Crime Network, I'm Sierra
right.
Gillespie.
No, there's what a Rosa Parks moment will get you these days. Wow. How about that, huh? That is something else. Yeah, I saw that, and I was like, I'm gonna try to bring you guys, like, we're gonna try to do this more often. Like, I'm gonna try to find examples, modern examples to go here at the end of this, towards the end of the show, after we watch the bulk of the content. Of course, we're doing history, so we're gonna watch a lot of history, right? But I want to see the results, right? I want to be able to show you guys, this is where this started and this is where it is. And we saw as we went through the documentary tonight, how easy it was to draw the correlations. Oh, yeah. To Jacob. Oh, geez. Okay. Yep. It's like where's Drex when you need him? But we saw, from the strategy to the people, to the language, to the not just America, not just the United States, but worldwide methodology, right? But this show focuses on, of course, the U.S. and we focus on bringing back the history so that we understand where this division and has come from in our country, right? We all want to imagine, we all want to imagine. We've all been told our whole lives it's about the color of someone's skin, right? But I have always debunked that very fast, but with the whole children on the playground analogy, or put children in a room together. They don't care about that. They just care about having fun and enjoying life together. And if anything, they appreciate what makes each one of them unique at that point. And we lose that. And it's people like these Marxists and other people that are out for power and to exploit people that have taken that away from us. They've taken that away from our kids. Now they're even going as far as taking it away from them from a very early age. I mean, maybe at some point it took it away from the adults, taken it away from the college kids, right? We saw how that works. But now it's all the way back into elementary school, right? It's all the way back. It's in everyone's faces constantly. And this is the result. People have this idea. They get a little uninhibited, or they get a little riled up or triggered by some media, and they go out and they act out. And we see this all the time now. And there's tons of examples. But I just want to, we can go through them all night, but I just wanted to show you I think that's a pretty good example of someone trying to believe they're having this big civil rights moment. And, they end up getting arrested for it. Now, she didn't get fined I guess they figured the punch in the face was enough, but she did have to go to jail. They probably suspended that for the night she spent in there for this. But, and a very meager fine, but she can't go back to the Target anymore. She's banned from Target. No. Yep, you're banned from Target. Sorry. Oh, man. Yeah, this is why it's important that we get this education back into schools and really just flourish it, man. If there's people out there that have some kind of inroads to this, I want to talk to what I call role model leadership in the Black community. I want to bring on creators that are out there making a difference and setting a good example for their community, and talk to them about the strategy for healing division and how we can actually get around to doing this, as well as correcting the education that's going on in our schools, right? With real good education that's going to make healthy minds, not broken minds. Oh, good night, Vicky. Thank you for being here. So yeah, that's what we're doing. I think I'm gonna I think I saw Magcore just hopped on a little gaming thing here. I might hop in a game with him, and I'll probably broadcast it over to Rumble. Now my game, like I said earlier at the beginning, my gaming stream, my new gaming stream, winning games, where I'm doing Far Cry 5. What you do is you're basically trying to take down this cult that had taken over this area in Montana, this fictional area. But as Vicky helped us figure out, it's really Glacier National Park. But yeah, it's a lot of fun, and me and him have a good time, and it's comedy. Dude, we're comedy. So if you want a good laugh and watching us take down some crazy cultists, I'm gonna see if he's still around and playing that, and if he is, I'll probably hop on with him for a little while. And yeah, so that's where we're at tonight. Next week we'll be back with more. Like I said, I'm not sure what I'm doing Saturday night. I'm kind of just it'll be out by Saturday, whatever it's gonna be, kind of a potluck or something. I don't know. But I do have some big shows coming up and some big guests coming up. So I'll announce those as they are confirmed. And we'll be back here next week. I haven't decided what we're going to dive into next week. We're going to continue down this line. And then maybe we'll go out to find some stuff on the Jim Crow laws, and we'll talk about that. I'm really walking this backwards to colonial days and so on. So I mean, to the days of slavery and so on. Thomas Sowell has a lot of information that's been left out of our history on that topic, slavery and life and slavery and the world as it was at the time. Some key points that we need to remember, and we'll continue to walk us back as we learn more about our real history and how to hopefully one day implement it back into our schools so that our future generations will benefit from living in truth. And I believe through that, we're really going to realize unity over division. The day will come. The tides will turn, and we will have our peaceful society back, where we are all just people having a great time together and enjoying living in the greatest country on the planet. So until then, until I see you next time, y'all keep winning. Yeah, I am.
It's
Thank you, Talking
time
Trash
to
and Steve. Thank you,
take a
Suzanne.
stand
Thanks, Jacob. Thanks for being here.
and
Jimmy Flair, thank you so much for being
repair
here and adding so much.
history. Thomas Sowell
Vicky,
has
thanks for stopping
shown
by.
us the way. It's time to start winning
Here, TR, thank you for being here,
reality.
sir.
We've
Graham, thank you for
been
being here.
divided for far
Daisy, thank you
too
so much
long.
for all you do.
It's time to come together and be strong. We can learn
Rabbit, thank
from
you.
our mistakes
Thank you for all you do,
and
Rabbit.
make a brighter
Tam, thank you so
future
much for
for
being here. Hope you enjoyed it.
everyone. We have the power to make a change.
Snafu,
All
thank you.
it takes is courage and faith.
All right.
So let's stand up for what's right and make history together.